Welcome to Burn the Rules with Chet Hirani. This podcast is for people who know leadership isn't about titles, noise, or ticking boxes. It's about how you think, how you show up, and how you perform when pressure is real. I'm Chet Hirani, and I work with leaders and high performers across business, sport, and life all over the world who want to take control of how they lead and perform. Not by copying someone else's rules, but by understanding themselves first. Every conversation here is grounded in experience, reflection, and practical insight. So if you're ready to question what leadership has been taught to be and decide what it means for you, you're in the right place. I want you to think about yesterday, your entire day. From the moment you woke up to the moment your head hit the pillow. And now tell me, how much of that day was genuinely productive? Not busy, productive. How many of those meetings actually needed you? How many of those emails actually moved the needle? And how many hours were spent doing things that felt like work but changed absolutely nothing? And be honest with yourself, because I already know the answer. Most of it was noise. I know this because I lived it. I spent years confusing movement with progress, filling every hour, responding to every message, sitting on every meeting I was invited to, because showing up felt like leading. And at the end of each day, I'd look at my calendar, see zero white space, and think, that was a good day. I was productive. But I wasn't productive. I was performing. There's a massive difference between looking busy and actually leading. And that's what this episode is about. And before you think this is another anti-hustle, work less and meditate conversation, it's not. I'm going to challenge both sides today because hustle culture is a lie. But so is the idea that doing less is automatically doing better. Both camps are wrong, and most leaders are trapped somewhere in between, exhausted and ineffective at the same time. Welcome to Burn the Rules. I'm Chet Hirani. This is the podcast where we strip back what's not working and get real about leadership. And today's episode is called Being Busy is Not Leadership. And I'm going to upset some people on both sides of this conversation. The grinders who think 60-hour weeks are a badge of honor, and the balanced crowd who think protecting your energy means avoiding anything uncomfortable. Neither of you has it right. And let me show you why. So let me take you back. Early in my career, I was working in a tech startup in London, and every single morning, the first thing I did was open my inbox. Now, that sounds normal, right? That's what everyone does. But here's what was actually happening. I'd spend the first 90 minutes of the day responding to other people's priorities, email requests, follow-ups. And by the time I'd cleared my inbox, I'd feel satisfied, like I'd accomplished something. I'd look at the clock, 10:30 in the morning, and think, good start. But the reality, I was drained. The creative energy, the strategic thinking, the high impact work that actually required me to lead, I was doing that on fumes, and my best hours were gone. And they'd been spent on tasks that made other people's day easier and not mine. It took me months to realize that clearing my inbox wasn't productivity, it was avoidance. I was choosing the easy, reactive work because the hard stuff, the thinking, the planning, the decisions that mattered required energy I'd already given away. And if you're listening to this and thinking it's me, it probably is. Because this is what the majority of leaders do. They react their way through the day and call it leadership. They let their calendar run them instead of running their calendar. And then they wonder why they're exhausted, why they feel stuck, and why nothing meaningful seems to shift despite being busy all the time. Here's the rule that needs burning. Busyness is not a metric, it's a mask. And behind the mask is usually a leader who's terrified of slowing down long enough to ask, am I actually doing the right things? Now, here's where I'm going to make myself unpopular with probably quite a few people. On one side, you've got the hustle culture, the grind never stops crowd, the people who post about their 4 a.m. wake-ups and 16-hour days like it's a personality trait. And look, I'm not just against hard work here. I've put in the hours. I've built from nothing. I'm a third degree black belt. You don't get that. You don't get there by working 9 to 5. But here's the difference. Effort without alignment is just exhaustion. If you're grinding, but you're grinding in the wrong direction, you're not building anything. You're just wearing yourself out and calling it progress. And the data backs this up. Research has shown that productivity drops off a cliff after 55 hours per week. After that, you're not getting more done. You're making more mistakes. You're slower. You're less creative. You're more reactive. Over 80% of employees already report work-related stress, and the risk of burnout doubles once you cross 60 hours. And that's not a badge of honor. That's self-destruction with a motivational quote on the top of it. But here's the part that the other side doesn't want to hear either. The anti-hustle movement has a problem too, because some people are using balance as code for avoidance. They've decided that protecting their energy means never being uncomfortable. Those boundaries mean saying no to everything. And that rest is more important than results. And I'm calling that out here because leadership is not uncomfortable. Growth is not uncomfortable. There are seasons where you need to push harder, stretch further, and show up when you'd rather not. The answer isn't to glorify the grind, but it's also not to glorify coasting and call it self-care. The real answer is something neither camp talks about. It's alignment. It's knowing what matters, doing that with everything you've got and having the discipline to cut everything that doesn't serve it. That's not hustle. That's not balance. That's leadership. So I want to tell you about a period in my life that I don't talk about much here. There was a season where everything was falling apart. At the same time, my business was struggling. I couldn't generate new clients. I felt like I was trading water, working hard every day and getting nowhere. And on top of that, I was going through deeply uncertain personal challenges, the kind that don't switch off when you sit down at your desk, the kind that sit in your chest all day. And here's what I did, what most leaders do when they're drowning. I just got busier. I filled every hour. I said yes to everything because the movement felt safer than the silence. And if I stopped long enough to think, I'd have to feel what was actually happening. So I didn't stop until I had no choice here, right? Because the busyness wasn't working. The clients weren't coming. My energy was gone. And I was standing in the middle of my own chaos, exhausted, realizing that I'd been sprinting on a treadmill, moving fast, going nowhere. And that's when I made one change. And I know it's going to sound almost absurdly simple, but hear me out here. I started spending 5 minutes every morning, just 5 minutes, identifying 3 priorities for the day, not tasks, priorities. The 3 things that if I did nothing else would actually move me forward. It felt trivial at first. 5 minutes, 3 things. But by the end of the first week, something had shifted. My focus was sharper. My decisions were clearer and cleaner. I stopped reacting and started choosing. And over 3 weeks, it became the foundation of how I rebuilt, not just my business, but my clarity, my energy, and my sense of direction. What I learned in that season was when everything's falling apart, the answer is not to do more. It's to do less, but to do the right things. Busyness isn't my way of avoiding the hard truth that I'd lost alignment. And 5 minutes of intentionality gave me back more than 60 hours ever did. So how do you know if your busyness is real productivity or just noise? Here are 3 signs. If any of them hit, you need to stop and recalibrate here. So sign 1, you're the bottleneck. If your team can't move without you, every decision has to pass through you. Every email needs your sign off. If meetings don't start until you're in the room, that's not leadership, that's congestion. You're not holding things together, you're holding things up. I've coached leaders who genuinely believe they're indispensable because everyone needs them. And when we dig in, the truth is always the same. They've built a system where nothing works without them because they never built a system that could. And that's not being needed. That's being a single point of failure. Sign 2, you're confusing presence with impact. You attend every meeting, you're on every call, you're CC'd on every email thread. And at the end of the day, you feel important because you're everywhere, but you changed nothing. You've added nothing. You were just there. I've worked with clients here in the financial sector who was just stuck in exactly the same pattern. They were in back-to-back meetings, 8 in the morning until 6 at night. They thought they were leading, they were spectating. When we carved out just 2 hours a day of protected strategic time, no meetings, no messages, just thinking, the output transformed within a fortnight. Not because they worked more, because they finally worked on things that mattered. Sign 3, you're using busyness to avoid discomfort. This is the one nobody admits. Clearing the inbox feels more productive than having that hard conversation. Scheduling another meeting feels safer than making the decision yourself. Checking Slack feels more manageable than sitting with uncertainty. Busyness becomes a hiding place, and the things you're hiding from, the tough conversations, the strategic decision, the personal issue you haven't dealt with, those don't go away because you're busy. They get worse. I know because I've done it. I used busyness to avoid dealing with what was really going on in my life, and all it did was delay the reckoning. Right, so now this is your move here, and this is your challenge. And this one's going to be uncomfortable because I'm asking you to look at your own calendar and be honest about what you see. So number 1, run a time audit on your last 5 days. Don't overthink it. Just categorize where your hours went. Reactive work, email messages, fires, requests from others, proactive work, strategy, decisions, high impact thinking, and filler, meetings you didn't need to be in, tasks someone else should have handled, time you spent looking busy but added nothing. I guarantee the split will shock you. And that split is the difference between a leader and a busy person with a title here. Number 2, protect 2 hours a day this week. Block them, guard them, no meetings, no messages, no, just 5 minutes. Use that time for the work that only you can do. The strategic thinking, the hard conversations, the planning that keeps getting pushed because you're too busy being busy. If you feel guilty blocking that time, ask yourself, guilty compared to what? Compared to another day of running on the hamster wheel and calling it leadership. And number 3, ask yourself one question every morning. If I could only do 3 things today, what would they be? Not tasks here, not errands. 3 things that would actually move the needle. Write them down. Do them first. Everything else can wait because it always does anyway. You've just been too busy to notice this. Right. So now let me leave you with this. I'm not telling you to slow down because I think you're working too hard. I'm telling you to slow down because I think you're working on the wrong things. And there's a generation of leaders out there right now, good leaders, smart leaders who are burning themselves out on noise and wondering why nothing changes. Busyness isn't a strategy. It's a symptom. It's the symptom of a leader who hasn't stopped long enough to decide what actually matters and cut everything that doesn't. That's not hustle. That's not balance. That's clarity. And clarity is the most underrated leadership skill on the planet here. In my framework, the 5 states of optimization, the productivity state isn't about doing more. It's about doing what matters most. And the planning state isn't about filling a calendar here. It's about designing a life and a leadership style with intention. And when those 2 states are aligned, they don't need to hustle. And you don't need to hustle, and you also don't need to grind. You just need to show up fully for the right things. And that's actually a lot harder than being busy. But it's the only thing that actually works. Right. So if this episode has hit home, share it with a leader who's drowning in their calendar. If you want to go deeper, grab a copy of my book, Burn the Rules, Lead from Within. And if you're a leader who's ready to stop confusing motion with momentum, reach out And also remember, like, follow, and subscribe to always be notified of the latest videos by me. I'm Chet Hirani, this is Burn the Rules, and I'll see you on the next one. Before you go, take a moment to think about what stayed with you from this conversation. Not what sounded impressive, but what challenged how you think, decide, or lead. See, leadership isn't something you wait for, it's something you practice internally, daily, and deliberately. And remember this, you can't lead a life that matters by following rules that don't. If this episode gave you perspective, share it with someone who's ready to take more control of how they lead and perform. And subscribe wherever you listen and keep redefining leadership on your own terms.